You're dreaming, or at least you hope you are. Because when your eyes begin to open, there's no warm blanket, no soft mattress, no gentle morning light pouring through gauzy curtains. Instead, it's stone, cold, rough, unwelcoming stone, beneath you, above you, around you, and it's dark. Not the cozy kind of darkness that comes with closed blinds or soft lamps, but a heavy, stubborn dark. The kind that clings to the corners of your room like damp moss. A tiny slit of a window lets in just enough pre-dawn light to cast long, sharp shadows across the floor. Your back aches. You've been sleeping on a straw-stuffed mattress, and not the kind you might find in some rustic countryside inn. This one is flat in the middle, lumpy at the sides, and home to something that definitely moved under your arm an hour ago. You don't want to think about what it was. Probably a flea, possibly worse. You pull your blanket up tighter, except it's not a blanket. It's a coarse woolen cloth that smells faintly of smoke, old sweat, and something sour. It itches your skin. There's no pillow, just your own arm folded beneath your head. Welcome to your first morning in a real medieval castle. You're not a lord or a lady. That's important to remember. Those positions are already taken. You're someone else, a servant maybe, or a low-ranking squire, perhaps a traveling cleric granted a place to stay in the guest quarters. In any case, you're not in the solar, not beside the hearth, and certainly not in anything remotely resembling comfort. The first sound you hear isn't birdsong, or bells, or even voices. It's coughing, a deep, raspy, hacking cough that echoes from somewhere in the corridor. Someone older, maybe a servant past their prime, hacking up the dust of centuries that seems to coat every corner of this castle. Then, boots. The heavy, deliberate thud of boots on stone. Someone walking past your chamber door. Too early, too loud. You're not sure who they are, but the rhythm of their steps is urgent. You close your eyes again for a moment, foolishly hoping you might be able to drift back to sleep. But already the air is changing. Smoke, damp, a bit of iron, a bit of rot, cold air from the highlands, mixing with whatever has been festering in the walls overnight. You sit up. That's when you feel the temperature. The stone floor beneath your feet is so cold it feels wet. You wince, rubbing your arms, pulling your threadbare tunic tighter around your chest. There is no fire in the hearth, no candles either. Firewood is scarce, and it's not for people like you. That will go to the kitchens or the Great Hall, places where important people gather. You'll be lucky if someone lights a torch in this hallway before dusk. Dressing takes little time. You have exactly one other garment, and it's no better than what you're wearing now. A long, rough tunic, leather shoes that barely fit, and a belt tied hastily around your waist. There's a cloak, too, but it's stiff with age and smells like it was pulled from the corner of a stable. Still, it's better than freezing. You push open the heavy wooden door, not with a handle, but with both hands, bracing your weight against it. It creaks, loud and unwilling, as it gives way. The hallway is narrow, the walls too close. Torches aren't lit yet, and the air here is thick with shadow. You walk carefully. The stones beneath your feet are uneven, slick in places, and your breath puffs visibly in the chill. Around the corner, a servant girl is already at work. She's hauling a bucket, large and sloshing, filled with water from the courtyard well. Her hands are red from cold. She doesn't greet you, just lowers her eyes and keeps walking. No one speaks much in the morning. There's little energy for it. Everyone has jobs to do, and most of them started before sunrise. You make your way through the winding passages, passing other doors, some open, some closed, and eventually come out into a wider corridor near the outer wall. A few archers are stationed on the parapet outside, wrapped in heavy cloaks, breathing quietly against the wind. Even they don't look comfortable. Their hands are stiff, their eyes tired. This isn't glory, this is obligation. In the distance, you hear it. The first bell of the day. Not a cheerful chime, but a low, steady clang from the chapel, a signal that the castle is stirring. That prayer's a beginning. That food, maybe, will soon follow. But food isn't guaranteed. That comes later. You descend the stairs, carefully. They're narrow, curved, and worn smooth at the center. People have slipped here before. Broken bones, even necks. There are no handrails, just stone and gravity. Down in the courtyard, the world is still grey. A few others mill about. Stable boys, cooks, 2 men struggling to wheel a barrel over the muddy ground. A small fire smokes near the smithy, barely lit, hardly warming anyone. You stop for a moment, watching your breath swirl in front of your face, and look up at the castle's main tower. It's tall, certainly, impressive from the outside, a marvel of its time, but from where you're standing, tired, cold and aching, it feels more like a prison than a palace, and it's only just morning. You move quickly now, toward the back wall, where the kitchen servants gather near the side door. There's no line, there are no trays, just hands extended, bowls in grip, waiting for whatever lukewarm scrap might be offered today. You haven't eaten yet, not since yesterday's stew, watery, bitter, with something vaguely root-like floating in it. You're not picky, you can't afford to be. Someone shoves a wooden bowl into your hand and says nothing. Inside, porridge, thick, tasteless, grey. You don't ask what it's made of. No one does. You sit beside a barrel, spoon in hand, and watch the courtyard bustle quietly. Everyone looks like you, tired, cold, heads low, eating without speaking. No one complains. Complaining doesn't change anything. Complaining might even get you less next time. And so you eat, bite by bite, slowly, and as you do, you begin to notice the castle around you, not as a fantasy, but as something alive, breathing, groaning, settling into its ancient bones. The walls aren't smooth and grand, they're chipped, mossy, and streaked with years of rain and smoke. The doors don't glide open, they scrape and splinter and jam. The windows don't gleam, they barely exist, just arrow slits and crude holes to let the smoke out, and the cold in. People don't glide through this place, like nobles in a painting. They trudge, they labor, they survive. A boy sneezes beside you. He's maybe 10, covered in soot, barefoot, and already on his second bowl of porridge. A servant girl swats him on the head, not unkindly, but with the kind of impatience that's born from exhaustion. You finish your meal. There's no nap, no second cup of coffee, no fireplace to sit beside. Your day is only beginning, and here's the thing, you're already behind. You head toward the lower hall, where the steward is waiting, a clipboard in hand. Well, not a clipboard, more like a slate, shouting orders, names, tasks. Your job today might be sweeping, or scrubbing pots, or helping haul barrels from the cellar to the kitchen. It might be climbing the tower stairs to relight torches. It might be emptying the chamber pots, and chamber pots are something else entirely. We'll get there, but for now, you blend in with the others, a name without weight, a body among dozens, all moving, all working, all trying to keep the massive aging beast of this castle from collapsing under its own centuries. There is no glamour, only rhythm, stone, straw, smoke, sweat, sweat. You begin to forget what it felt like to be warm, and above it all, somewhere far beyond your reach, the Lord and Lady sleep a little longer. Their chamber is heated, their bed soft, their food, when it comes, will be brought to them on silver. There's a fire lit for them already. Someone's combing out the lady's hair, someone else is feeding the dogs. The castle, for them, is protection, power, but for you, it's survival. You breathe slowly, deeply. It's only morning, but already, you're beginning to feel it. The weight of the walls pressing in, the chill settling in your chest, the dull ache behind your eyes. This is just the beginning. The first hour of a long grinding day in the heart of a medieval fortress, and in a little while, you'll need the toilet. God help you. The castle is fully awake now, not in the way a modern home wakes, with lights switching on, kettles boiling, or gentle morning playlists, but with clatter, scraping, echoes of footsteps pounding over stone, yells across the yard, dogs barking, metal ringing out from the forge. A castle never truly sleeps, but morning is when its heartbeat quickens, and you, still blinking sleep from your eyes, are expected to keep up with it. You shuffle through the corridor, with the others, your bowl still in your hand, the faint residue of grey porridge, cooling into a sticky film on the sides. You don't even bother scraping it clean. There's not much use. The water for washing dishes is cold, and the cloth used to wipe them down has been used dozens of times already, soaked and soured with the remnants of meals past. No one talks about cleanliness, not in the way we think of it now. There's no dish soap, no hot tap, no sterile rinse. Hygiene is a luxury that simply doesn't exist for most people in this castle. And the kitchen, well, you've seen better cellars. It's not so much a kitchen, as it is a series of connected spaces, one for chopping, one for storing root vegetables in barrels, one for the actual cooking, a giant blackened hearth that spits out smoke more often than heat. It smells of old onions, sour wine, and whatever was last burned to the bottom of the pot. And right now, there's not much in the way of food being prepared, because meals, true meals, are rare. You've already eaten your breakfast, such as it is. That bowl of cold porridge wasn't a warm-up to anything else. That was the first course, the main course, and the dessert. If you're lucky, there might be another meal sometime in the afternoon, but between now and then, you wait, and hunger waits with you. It's a different kind of hunger here. Not the temporary kind that comes from skipping lunch or forgetting to snack between meetings. It's quieter, duller. It settles behind your ribs and becomes a normal part of the day, a steady background hum, like the cold, something you grow used to. You pass the storeroom. Inside, you can see what's left of last year's harvest, sacks of dried beans, shriveled apples, a few salted fish hanging from hooks overhead. Everything smells slightly off. The apples are soft, the fish are grey and brittle. A cook eyes you suspiciously as you glance inside. You lower your head and move on. You have a job to do today, and you've been assigned to the upper kitchens. Not to cook, oh no. You're just helping transport barrels from the cellar to the scullery, and then buckets of water from the courtyard, well to the hearth. Again, and again, and again. The buckets are heavy, the stone steps slippery. You don't count how many times you go up and down. You just stop noticing. Each time you pass the dining hall, not the great hall, mind you, but the smaller one for retainers and important guests, you catch a whiff of something better. Fresh bread, maybe cheese, something richer than what you had, something not meant for you. That's for the steward, the master-at-arms, the lady's maid, the chaplain, the visiting knight. You are invisible, and that's probably for the best. At one point you pause by the kitchen wall, out of breath. Your arms ache. Your feet are soaked from a sloshed bucket. You lean your head back, and take in the ceiling above you, blackened with centuries of soot, cracked from smoke and heat, beams bent and creaking. You wonder how old this building really is. 100 years? 2? 3? And how many people like you have passed through it, dragging buckets, hauling barrels, bowing low, surviving. Probably thousands. The idea is oddly comforting. You're not the first. You won't be the last. The cook barks at you to move. You lift the next pail. Outside, the sun rises higher, though you wouldn't know it. The castle walls block most of the light. Inside the stone corridors, it's always a little dark, a little cold, a little damp, even at noon. Eventually, when the light shifts enough to slant differently through the slit windows, you know it must be close to the mid-meal. This is the second and final meal of the day, technically called dinner in the medieval world, though it's nothing like what modern dinners look like. You head back down to the same place you ate breakfast, same wall, same bowl, same barrel to sit on, and this time, it's stew, sort of. A few hunks of turnip, a bit of old barley, and something else, something chewy, meat, maybe, or maybe not. You eat it anyway, because everyone else is. You don't chew too long. The less you think about what you're tasting, the better. There's no salt, no spice, no herbs. The broth is thin and slightly sour, but it's warm, and that's something. As you eat, someone sits beside you, an older man, grey beard, face lined with the weight of 60 hard years. He nods. You nod back. Neither of you speak. There's no need. The silence of the castle is never empty. It's full of creaks, groans, distant clatters, and the dull thud of labor. Conversations are a luxury, saved for the evening, if at all. Once your bowl is empty, you lick the last drop from the edge, wipe it on your tunic, and stand. There's no dessert, no break, no moment to digest. Your name will be called again soon, and if not your name, then your task. Because in the castle, the work is endless. You pass through the kitchens again, and notice someone being scolded, a boy, maybe 12, holding a broken jug. The steward strikes him across the shoulder, with a rod. Not cruelly, but firmly. Enough to bruise, enough to remember. Mistakes in the kitchen cost more than just food. They cost trust, and trust is currency. You hurry on. Later you find yourself in the garden, not a peaceful one, not a place of roses and fountains, but the herb garden, walled in, muddy, and mostly empty this time of year. You're gathering leeks for the cook. Your knees are wet, your hands numb, and the smell of earth is thick under your nails. You rub your nose with the back of your sleeve. It smears. You don't care. Someone once told you that lords dine with silver, but the rest of the castle eats from wood, clay, or their hands. That's not quite true. Most of the castle doesn't eat much at all. Sometimes there's bread, dark, coarse, made with more bran than grain, dense and heavy. Sometimes there's cheese, chalky and sharp. Sometimes, if you're very lucky, someone sneaks you a plum, or a roasted onion, or a boiled egg. But these are moments, not meals. They're rewards, rare and fleeting. You eat to survive, not to enjoy. And even survival isn't promised. You once knew a boy who died of spoiled meat. No one even buried him properly, just rolled him in cloth and dropped him beyond the curtain wall. He had eaten quickly, proudly, the scraps from a night's table. No one told him the meat had turned. No one cared. The castle doesn't stop for one more body. And yet, as grim as it is, it's still home. It's where you know the corners, the echoes, the rhythm of the bells. You know which doors groan the loudest, which halls stay warm the longest. You know when the cook is angry, and when the steward is drunk. You know how to survive, not thrive, not flourish, but survive, in a place that does not welcome weakness, and that knowledge, in its own strange way, is a kind of power. As evening draws near, the castle begins to quiet again. The shadows lengthen, the sounds become softer, fewer boots, more whispering. Fires are lit, torches kindled, the smells from the hearth shift from cooking to smoke. And just when you think the worst of the day is behind you, the next need arises, the one you've been putting off since morning. You need to relieve yourself, and that, in a medieval castle, is about to become an experience all its own. But we'll get to that. First you step into the corridor again, shoulders heavy, eyes gritty, the cold returning to your fingers. You hear the steward's voice in the distance. Someone's being summoned. It might be you. You breathe deeply, slowly. You've made it through the morning. The hardest part is behind you, maybe. But the castle doesn't sleep, and neither will you, not properly. The next challenge is just around the bend, and this one stinks. Let me know when you're ready for chapter 3, where we dive into the reality of medieval sanitation, garderobes, and just how unpleasant nature's call really was inside a stone fortress. You've put it off long enough. There's only so much you can ignore: the creeping discomfort in your stomach, the growing pressure in your gut, and the dull ache that's been bothering you since breakfast, or whatever that grey porridge-like substance was. Nature calls in the castle, just like anywhere else. The difference is, nature doesn't have much help here. There is no bathroom. There is no plumbing. There are no private spaces with soft lighting and scented candles and running water. There is instead, the garderobe, a term that sounds quaint and vaguely French, until you realize what it really means. You ask a kitchen boy where the nearest one is. He doesn't say anything, just points toward a narrow corridor that winds around the edge of the keep. His eyes say the rest. You're not going to enjoy this. The hallway narrows the further you go, the air growing colder, more humid. You follow the faint, unmistakable scent, a mix of rot, wet stone, and something sharp, and unmistakably human. You hold your breath, without meaning to. The entrance to the garderobe is small, a wooden door, crooked on its hinges, barely holding onto the frame. There's no latch, no lock. Privacy is optional. You push the door inward slowly, cautiously, and peer inside. It's not a room, not really, just a small stone chamber, with a single wooden bench built into a gap in the wall. And in the middle of that bench, a hole, a very dark, very ominous hole. You step in carefully, your feet crunching over straw scattered across the stone floor, meant to soak up whatever misses. There are stains. There's dampness. There are cobwebs in the corners. And the smell, it hits you harder now. There's no window, just a narrow slit in the wall that lets in a shaft of grey light, and a biting draft of cold wind that whips straight through you. In the winter, some garderobes get so cold that frost forms around the opening. In the summer, the smell gets worse, much worse. You look down into the hole, but it's hard to see anything clearly, just darkness. The waste drops down a chute into either a cesspit or, if the castle is cleverly designed, straight into the moat. Many castles were built this way. The human waste was essentially flushed out by gravity, and the hope that rain or running water would carry it away. It didn't always work. Sometimes, it just sat there, festering, steaming, feeding the local rats and attracting flies that would then happily make their way back inside to the kitchens. It's all part of the ecosystem now. You hesitate. You wish you didn't have to go, but you do. So you take your place on the bench, trying not to think about what's beneath you. You steady yourself, with one hand against the wall, and suddenly your fingers touch something soft. You jerk back, mold, possibly worse. You shake your head, focus, and just do what must be done. There's no toilet paper, of course. That won't exist for hundreds of years. What people used instead ranged from moss, straw, or, if you were lucky, a small cloth rag kept near the garderobe that was rinsed and reused. You don't want to ask about that cloth, and you certainly don't want to use your sleeve. Afterward, you step outside, not feeling much cleaner, not feeling much relieved. There's no soap, no towel, just your hands, and the cold wind, and the faint sting of humiliation that seems to be baked into every part of this process. You understand now why people hold it in, why they wait, why some simply take a walk outside the castle walls to the trees, if they have the chance. You walk back down the corridor, silent, head low, and try not to breathe too deeply. But here's the thing, this was normal. Daily life in a castle meant shared spaces, no privacy, and constant exposure to the less glamorous aspects of the human condition. Even the lord and lady had to make do with a bench and a hole. Theirs might have been decorated, perhaps even with a cushion, but it was still just that, a seat over a pit. Some garderobes were designed with chutes that emptied into a pit that servants were expected to clean. Others were suspended over the outer walls, so waste would fall into the moat or open air below. A clever design, but one that didn't always account for wind direction or siege warfare. You see, in a siege, when the castle was surrounded and the moat became still and stagnant, that same waste would begin to fester. The smell would rise through the walls, and if the enemy was clever, they might try to contaminate the water supply entirely, throwing in the bodies of animals, or worse. Diseases spread easily in these conditions. Dysentery, typhoid, and all manner of stomach ailments were common, and they weren't just uncomfortable, they were often fatal. Washing hands wasn't common practice. Most people didn't make the connection between cleanliness and illness. Germ theory was still centuries away. And soap, well, it existed, but it was expensive and not widely used. When people did wash, it was often with cold water and maybe sand or ash to scrub. Baths were rare, not just because of time or privacy, but because of firewood. Heating water took tremendous resources. To fill a single wooden tub with hot water, you needed buckets brought in from the well, heated one by one over the fire, and poured in slowly. This was reserved for the wealthy, or for special occasions. Some people bathed once a month, some less. Your skin itches again, just thinking about it. You remember the blanket you slept under, the way it scratched, the way it smelled. You remember the fleas, everyone had them. Lice too. Combing them out with small bronze or bone combs was a daily chore. Delousing was so common, it became a social event. Families would gather, pick through each other's hair, crush the insects between fingernails. Monks wrote about it in their journals. Noble ladies did it in their chambers. Even kings weren't spared. Your head itches now, just a little. Is it in your mind, or is it real? You scratch, hoping it's nothing. Later, you pass the laundry yard, if it can be called that. A stone basin sits there, half filled with cloudy water, and two women stand knee-deep in cold puddles.
scrubbing garments with stones and rough brushes. Their hands are red. The wind blows their wet sleeves flat against their skin. They're washing linens, but they'll never be white again. Everything here is the color of earth. Gray, brown, dull. One of them looks up and gives you a tired smile. You nod. She goes back to scrubbing. You begin to realize how much of life in the castle is maintenance. Not ceremony, not pageantry, but just constant back-breaking maintenance. Holing, washing, scraping, emptying, and none of it ever truly ends. There's no clean, only cleaner than it was. There are no perfumes, no fresh linen closets, just damp fabrics strung near the fire. And everything smells a little bit like smoke and sweat. By the time evening draws near again, you're tired in a way that feels ancient. Not the tired that comes from a long day at school or work, but the kind that seeps into your bones. A medieval tired. The kind of tired that comes from lifting, bending, hauling, scrubbing, all without heat, all without breaks, all without breaks, all without breaks, all without brilliant. You eat a second time, more stew. This time, it's thinner, more water than barley. There's no meat. You chew slowly, methodically. You don't taste anything anymore. You just eat because you must. You sit on the same barrel. You look around at the same people, all of them quiet, chewing, breathing, existing. The garderobe already feels like a distant memory. Not because it's unimportant, but because everything here is hard. Every piece of your day presses down. There is no space for reflection, only routine. Later, as night begins to fall, and it does fall, fast and heavy, the castle dims. Torches are lit along the wall. Fire crackles in the great hall. Shadows shift in the corridors. There are fewer voices, fewer footsteps. You climb the stairs to your chamber slowly. Your legs ache. Your hands are chapped and raw. Your mouth is dry. Back in your small cell, the fire is long dead. The room is cold, the air unmoving. You pull the same blanket over your shoulders, lie on the same straw-stuffed mattress, and curl into yourself like a child, hiding from winter. Your stomach rumbles. You don't even care. The last thing you hear before you fall asleep is a rat, or something like it, skittering near the wall. You sigh, quietly, and you wonder, how many more days like this could you endure? Tomorrow is only going to get harder, because a storm is coming, and you'll soon learn what it means to be trapped in a castle during the long bitter dark.
The sun has long slipped behind the hills, and the castle is swallowed by twilight. The few torches flicker uncertainly against the encroaching darkness, casting long shadows that dance eerily across the cold stone walls. Outside, the wind begins to howl. It slips through the arrow slits and the cracks in the walls, whispering secrets of far-off forests and wild, stormy nights. The scent of rain hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the ever-present smell of damp stone, smoke, and human sweat. Inside, the castle is settling into a different rhythm, one measured in flickering flames, hushed voices, and cautious footsteps. For those who live here, night is a time of unease, of tension, of being trapped within the very walls that are supposed to protect you. It's not just the darkness that makes it feel this way, it's the sound. The castle creaks and groans as the temperature drops. Heavy wooden beams shift with the cold, sending sharp cracks echoing down long, empty corridors. The wind pushes against the massive doors, rattling their iron hinges, and forcing the thick oaken gates to shudder as if the entire fortress might collapse at any moment. Rain begins to tap against the narrow windows, a steady rhythm that soon grows into a drumming roar as sheets of water lash against the battlements. You pull your threadbare blanket tighter around your shoulders, trying to ignore the chill creeping into your bones. The fireplace sputters and coughs, casting flickering light that barely reaches the far corners of your tiny chamber. Outside your door, footsteps fall softly, the patrol making its rounds to ensure that everything remains secure. You know they check the locks and bolts on every gate and chamber, but their presence is more for comfort than anything else. No one really believes that anyone could break in, not with these walls. Yet the thought nags at you. What if the storm weakens the walls? What if the rain floods the lower chambers? What if you try to push the thoughts away? But the storm doesn't care about your worries. It intensifies. The wind screams through the battlements now, tearing at the wooden shutters and rattling the flags that flap wildly from the towers. Lightning cracks open the sky in jagged white veins, illuminating the courtyard in brief, ghostly flashes. Thunder follows, rolling through the hills like an angry beast. You wonder how many centuries these walls have stood through storms like this, how many winters, how many nights just like this one. And you wonder if they will stand through this one. Down in the lower halls, the kitchen staff works frantically to keep the fires alive. Without heat, the castle would freeze. Food would spoil. The water in the barrels would turn to ice. No one could survive long in these stone tombs if the hearths went out. You imagine the cooks pouring endless buckets of wood onto the fire, their faces flushed from heat and exertion, their hands blackened with soot. Their work is never done, even as the storm rages above. In the great hall, the lords and ladies have retired to their chambers, wrapped in heavy cloaks and furs. Candles gutter in sconces, their flames trembling with the draught. Servants hurry quietly, bringing wine or hot broth to their masters. But the storm's unrest is felt by all. You hear muffled voices behind the closed doors, whispered prayers, anxious conversations, quiet curses against the weather. Because a storm in a medieval castle is more than just a nuisance, it's a threat. The rain seeps through the roof tiles, dripping onto wooden beams and stone floors, making slick puddles where the water collects. The moat swells as rain pours into the surrounding ditches, threatening to overflow. Water leaks into cellars and storerooms, soaking the grain and ruining precious supplies. If the weather lasts long enough, the castle could be cut off from the outside world, unable to send or receive messages, unable to send runners for help or extra food. And worse still, the damp can cause structural damage, loosening mortar and weakening the stone itself. You think about the people who came before you, the masons, carpenters, and builders who shaped these walls, carving and fitting each stone with care. How they must have battled the same storms, working in the cold and rain, knowing that one small mistake could bring the whole fortress crashing down. You can almost hear their voices carried on the wind. Hold fast, hold fast. The night grows colder, your breath fogs in the air. You shiver, you try to get comfortable on the hard mattress, but the cold stone beneath it seems to suck away any warmth you might have. Outside your window, a branch snaps sharply in the wind. You sit up suddenly, heart pounding. It's only the storm. You remind yourself of that, but the mind plays tricks at night. Every creak, every groan, every distant clang sounds like something more. An enemy, a thief, a ghost. You pull the blanket up over your head, trying to block out the sounds, but you can't. Eventually, exhaustion wins. You drift off into a fitful sleep, dreaming of falling stones and rushing water, and then the worst happens. The thunderclap comes right overhead, a deafening crack that shakes the walls and sends dust falling from the ceiling. You bolt upright, heart racing. Lightning flashes again, brighter this time, and you see something you don't want to see. A shimmer in the far corner of your chamber, a shadow, maybe, or something darker. You blink, it's gone. You tell yourself, it's just a trick of the light, but the fear lingers. The storm rages on. Hours pass. You wake again, soaked in sweat, to the sound of dripping water. The roof has started leaking. You scramble out of bed, grabbing a bucket, and moving quickly to catch the drips. The floor is slick with water, and you slip once, catching yourself on the wall. This is no ordinary night. This is a test. If the castle survives, you survive. If the roof caves in, you'll be buried beneath tons of stone. You take a deep breath, and do your best to stay calm. You think of the soldiers on the ramparts, standing watch in the rain and wind, eyes sharp despite the cold. You think of the cooks, the servants, the lord and lady upstairs. You think of the castle itself, a living, breathing thing, older than you, stronger than you, and you hope it holds. Outside, the moat begins to overflow, and the rain pounds harder, turning the dirt paths to mud. Water streams down the walls like rivers, pouring into the courtyard and pooling at your feet. You imagine what it would be like to be outside right now. No walls, no shelter, just cold, wind and rain, with nowhere to run. The castle may be a prison, but it is also your fortress. Morning cannot come soon enough. The morning light filters weakly through narrow windows, painting soft gold across the cold stone walls. You awake slowly, muscles stiff and sore from the night's unrest. The storm has passed, leaving behind puddles on the floor, mud in the courtyard, and a chill that seeps into your bones. But the castle, battered but unbroken, still stands. It's a new day. But life inside these walls doesn't get easier. You step out of your small chamber, and into the castle's main corridor. The air is heavy with the lingering scent of damp wood, smoke, and something sharper, a metallic tang, that reminds you of blood. You are reminded quickly that danger here isn't just outside, in the form of enemies or storms. It lurks in every corner, in every shared cup and towel, in every scratch or bite. Disease. In the medieval castle, sickness is as much a threat as any invading army. The first thing you notice is the smell. Not just the waste, but the sick rooms, where those stricken with fever or infection lie on rough beds, their faces pale and sweaty, their eyes glazed. The small infirmary is tucked away in a cold stone chamber, sparsely furnished with only a few beds and some herbs hanging from the ceiling. You step inside quietly, trying not to disturb the fragile patients. A woman lies there, coughing weakly, her skin mottled with a rash that hints at something worse. Nearby, a man clutches his side, groaning softly. There is little medicine here, no antibiotics, no sterile equipment. The healers rely on herbs, poultices, and prayers. Bloodletting is common, a practice meant to balance the humors but often leaving the patient weaker. Sometimes, the healers use leeches. You shudder, infections spread quickly, a simple cut can become deadly. You remember your own recent scrape from the fall near the battlements. It itches, and you've done your best to clean it with cold water, but you know that's barely enough. You glimpse the healer moving between the beds, carrying a small wooden box filled with dried plants. She murmurs softly, crushing leaves and mixing them with water to make bitter salves. You wonder if it will help. Beyond the infirmary lies the bustling heart of the castle, the kitchens, workshops, and living quarters. People are moving about, but there's a quiet tension. Someone coughing harshly in the corner, someone else rubbing their swollen joints. Illness does not discriminate here. Lords, ladies, servants, soldiers, all are vulnerable. You make your way through the corridors and come upon the blacksmith's forge. The ringing of hammer against anvil fills the air, steady and rhythmic. Sparks fly from the fire, casting orange glows onto the soot-streaked faces of the smiths. The blacksmith is a giant of a man, muscles rippling as he shapes glowing iron into tools and weapons. He wipes sweat from his brow, and grimaces. A deep gash runs along his forearm, raw and red. You ask him if he's been to the healer. He shrugs. It's nothing, he says gruffly, but you see the grimace when he moves. Injuries like this are everyday hazards. The forge, the battlefield, even the kitchen can be deadly places. There are no antibiotics here, no sterile bandages. You wrap your mind around the idea that many people likely die from infections picked up in simple accidents. A cut, a burn, a puncture. You also learn of a darker truth. The crowded, damp living conditions make disease spread like wildfire. Tuberculosis, pneumonia, and influenza are common. And then there are the fevers, the mysterious fevers that come without warning and often claim lives quickly. The plague, too, looms like a shadow over the centuries. Though you don't see it now, you know from whispers and rumors that it's the worst nightmare of all. You realize that living in the castle is a constant battle, not just against enemies, but against the unseen enemies of germs and illness. The latrines you visited earlier are only part of the problem. Water sources are often contaminated. Wells can be polluted by nearby waste pits. Food can spoil easily in damp conditions. You watch as a servant rinses vegetables in a basin, then dries his hands on a cloth that he shares with others. You cringe. You also notice the flies, thick and buzzing, landing everywhere. They carry disease. They are unwelcome guests, yet they are constant. You start to understand how quickly a simple cough can become an epidemic here. Later in the day, you visit the chapel. Here the monks offer prayers for the sick and dying. They also keep records of illnesses and deaths, some of the earliest medical documentation. The priests bless the afflicted, hoping divine intervention will heal what earthly remedies cannot.
You overhear a whispered conversation about a mysterious illness spreading through a nearby village. It sounds like the plague. You feel a chill, despite the warmth of the chapel. Disease is not just an unfortunate side effect of castle life, it's an ever-present threat. You decide to leave the chapel and walk through the castle courtyard. Children play near the walls, their laughter ringing out, but their faces are pale, and some cough quietly. You think about how different this life is from your own, how fragile it feels. As evening falls, you retreat to your chamber once more. The day's aches settle into your muscles. Your mind races with all you've learned about the dangers hidden in the walls, in the air, in the very fabric of castle life. You wonder how anyone managed to survive, let alone thrive. But survive they did, because life in the castle is hard, relentless, and often brutal. Yet it is also filled with moments of humanity, of kindness, resilience and hope. And as you lay your head down on the rough pillow, you realize that surviving a day in a medieval castle requires more than strength. It requires endurance, and a bit of luck. The morning light filters through the narrow windows once again, casting a soft glow on the worn wooden table in the great hall. The scent of freshly baked bread mingles with the earthy aroma of stewing meats and simmering vegetables. It's a quiet moment, before the day's bustle begins in earnest, and you find yourself drawn to the heart of the castle, the kitchen. In the medieval world, food is survival, but also status, ritual, and sometimes comfort. Yet, contrary to the lavish banquets you might imagine from tales of kings and queens, the daily diet of most castle residents is surprisingly simple, repetitive, and at times less than appetizing. You step inside the sprawling kitchen, a cavernous room filled with long wooden tables, heaps of vegetables and grains, large iron cauldrons bubbling over roaring fires, and a chorus of voices, cooks shouting instructions, knives chopping rhythmically, and the clatter of pots and pans. The kitchen smells like a mix of earth, smoke, and something faintly sour. You spot piles of onions, cabbages, and turnips, the staples of the medieval diet, especially during the cold months when fresh produce is scarce. Meat is precious here. Not everyone gets to eat it every day. For the common folk and lower servants, meat might be a rare luxury, usually reserved for feast days or special occasions. You watch as a cook stokes the fire beneath a large pot of pottage, a thick stew made from whatever vegetables and grains are available, often flavored with herbs or bits of salted pork or bacon. Pottage is the everyday food of the castle, filling, warming, and easy to prepare in large quantities. You reach for a piece of bread, dense, coarse, and a little stale. It's the kind of bread that fills you up but doesn't quite satisfy your taste buds. Still, it's a crucial part of the meal, used to scoop up stew or soak up gravy. You wonder how many slices you'd have to eat to feel truly full. Outside the kitchen, the servants carry buckets of ale and barrels of wine. These drinks are often safer to consume than water, which can be contaminated. Ale is the everyday drink for most people, low in alcohol and nutritious, made from barley or rye. You think about how strange it is to drink something alcoholic every day just to avoid sickness. But in a time before modern sanitation, it's an understandable precaution. You watch a servant pour a dark, foamy ale into a wooden mug, and you take a tentative sip. It's bitter but refreshing in a rough, honest way. The lords and ladies upstairs enjoy better fare, roasted meats, spiced dishes, sweetened pies, and imported delicacies like almonds, figs, and sugar, a rare and costly treat. But even their meals are governed by the seasons, the harvest, and the limits of medieval preservation. You imagine the great feasts, long tables groaning under platters of roast boar, venison, and freshly baked bread, accompanied by musicians and minstrels. But for most days the food is humble and functional. You move to the pantry, where barrels of salted meat, dried fish, and preserved fruits line the shelves. Preservation is key here. Without refrigeration, food must be cured, smoked or pickled to last through the winter. Salted pork and beef are common staples, often rehydrated and cooked slowly to tenderize the tough meat. Fish, especially salted or smoked herring, is also a frequent part of the diet, especially on days when eating meat is forbidden for religious reasons. You glance over a basket of fresh herbs, rosemary, thyme, sage, used to add flavor and believed to have medicinal properties. You think about the effort required to maintain these supplies, the hunters bringing in game, the fishermen casting their nets, the farmers tending crops and livestock, and the kitchen staff turning all of it into meals. Despite the challenges, the castle kitchen is a place of constant activity, a hub that keeps everyone fed and functioning. Later you visit the buttery, the storage room for ale and wine. Large wooden barrels are lined up, their contents carefully measured and rationed. Drinking is regulated, especially during times of shortage. You learn that even the choice of drink can affect health. Ale brewed poorly could cause sickness, while water from the well might be contaminated. Thus the reliance on alcohol as a safer alternative is both practical and dangerous. You overhear a conversation among the servants about the challenges of rationing during winter, when food supplies run low, and the quality of meals suffers. The fear of famine is never far from anyone's mind. You think about how different your own meals are. Fresh fruits and vegetables year-round, refrigeration, endless choices. The contrast is striking. Still you notice moments of joy in the castle meals. A special honey cake brought out for a feast day. The laughter shared over a rare jug of sweet wine. The simple pleasure of a warm bowl of pottage after a cold day. Food is survival here, yes, but also community. As the sun sets you sit quietly in the great hall, watching the flicker of candlelight on the walls. The day's meals have been eaten, the kitchens are quieter now, and the castle settles into evening. You reflect on the simple yet complex world of medieval food, a world shaped by necessity, tradition, and the limits of the time. It is hard, sometimes grim, but it is life, and it sustains. The castle awakens with a different energy today. The usual quiet hum of daily chores is punctuated by the distant sound of music and laughter, carried through the corridors, like a gentle breeze. Something is stirring beyond the thick walls, an event, a celebration, or perhaps a ceremony. You find yourself drawn toward the great hall, the heart of social life in the castle. This vast chamber is where everyone gathers, from the highest lord to the lowest servant, to eat, drink, speak, and sometimes to perform. As you enter, the room bursts into life. Tapestries hang from the walls, their colors rich and vivid even in the flickering candlelight. A long wooden table, polished and gleaming, is laid out with platters of food and pitchers of wine. Servants dart about, pouring drinks and arranging seats. At the far end, musicians tune their lutes and pipes, preparing to fill the hall with melodies that will carry into the night. This is no ordinary day. It is a feast day, a momentary escape from the relentless grind of castle life. You take a place along the benches, feeling the rough wood beneath your hands. Around you faces shine with anticipation and warmth. Even the stoic guards seem to relax, allowing small smiles to flicker. The feast begins with the clatter of knives and spoons against plates, and the hall fills with the sound of voices raised in conversation and song. Feasts were more than just meals. They were social glue, binding the community together. They offered an opportunity to celebrate victories, mark religious holidays, or honor visiting nobles. But they also served as a stage for politics and power. You observe the lord seated at the head of the table, a figure both commanding and cautious. His eyes scan the room, watching alliances and rivalries unfold in subtle glances and guarded words. Beside him, the lady of the castle moves gracefully, her silk gown shimmering in the firelight. She exchanges pleasantries and discreetly oversees the proceedings, ensuring that decorum is maintained. You notice how seating arrangements reveal the hierarchy. Closer to the lord sit favored knights and advisors, while the servants and lesser folk gather farther down the long tables, or in separate rooms. The food is plentiful tonight: roast meats, fresh bread, cheeses, and sweet pastries. The cooks have outdone themselves, transforming the humble staples of daily life into something rich and celebratory. As you eat, musicians begin to play lively tunes, and some of the young squires rise to dance, their boots tapping rhythmically on the stone floor. The atmosphere lightens. Laughter bubbles up, stories are exchanged, and even the oldest warriors seem to forget their weariness for a time. Yet beneath the joy, the politics never rest. You overhear a knight speaking quietly to a noble about upcoming disputes over land. A lady whispers urgently to her companion about rumors from the neighboring castle. Alliances are brokered in coded words. Loyalty is tested in smiles. Even the entertainment carries meaning. Minstrels sing of heroic deeds, reminding all present of the values and legends that define their world. Tales of bravery inspire the young and reinforce the social order. You marvel at how this dance of celebration and strategy plays out nightly behind these stone walls. Later the feast winds down, and people begin to drift away to their chambers. But the castle's social life doesn't end with the Great Hall. In smaller rooms and corridors, quieter gatherings take place. Servants sharing stories, knights discussing tactics, ladies exchanging gossip. These moments reveal another side of castle life, the human connections that make this harsh place home. You find yourself wandering toward the courtyard, where a small group of children chase each other, their laughter ringing out like birdsong. Nearby, a few older men sit around a fire, sharing ale and memories. The castle is a world within a world, a microcosm of society, with its own rules, rhythms and relationships. You realize that navigating this social landscape requires more than strength or courage. It demands tact, patience, and an understanding of the subtle currents that flow beneath every word and gesture. As night deepens, the castle quiets once more. The last flickers of candlelight fade, and silence settles like a soft blanket. You retreat to your chamber, thoughts swirling with the scenes you witnessed. The castle is not just a fortress of stone, it is a living community, shaped by the bonds between its people. And amidst the hardships, those bonds are what endure. The morning begins not with song or ceremony, but with the scrape of wooden doors opening, the thud of boots on flagstones, and the unmistakable sound of people returning to work. While the nobles might enjoy the comfort of embroidered pillows and embroidered stories in the solar, most of the castle's population lives by the rhythm of labor. Life in a castle isn't all feasts and fireplaces. Behind every banner flying from the tower is someone climbing that tower to clean it. Behind every roast on the table is a butcher, a hunter, a cook, and behind every sturdy stone wall is a mason, a carpenter, a laborer whose calloused hands shape the stronghold with sweat and blood. You begin your morning following a servant assigned to the outer ward. Her name is Alice, and she's been working here since she was old enough to carry a bucket. She begins by checking the barrels of rainwater collected during the storm. Water needed for everything from washing dishes to cleaning wounds. Each barrel must be examined, shifted, rationed. There's no such thing as wasted water here. Alice then carries 2 heavy pails across the uneven courtyard. Her steps are careful, deliberate. A misstep means spilled water, and with that, a reprimand, or worse, a punishment from the steward. Later you join a group of laborers hauling timber to the armory. The castle is constantly in need of repairs. Warped door frames, rotting beams, loose stones. Every day, some part of it needs mending. You realize quickly that the work is relentless. The labor never stops. You pass the laundress beating cloth against river stones. Her hands are raw, red from cold water, and harsh soap made of animal fat and ash. Nearby, kitchen boys are hauling sacks of grain, their backs bowed like old men though they are barely into their teens. Even within the garrison, the men-at-arms are not idle. They sharpen blades, repair shields, clean armor, and practice drills in the mud-slick training yard. Their strength is for more than battle. They are the spine of the castle's function. And then there are the invisible workers, the scribes tucked away in the chapel, the stewards calculating rations, the herbalist drying plants, the falconer tending birds. Every soul has a role, and failure in one link weakens the entire chain. Even the lord of the castle is not idle. He presides over disputes, manages the estate, oversees justice, all part of the never-ending task of control. The labor here isn't just physical, it is woven into the social fabric. Every moment is a test of one's role, one's worth. You sit by the well in the courtyard, watching the world pass by. A young maid collapses nearby, breathless from carrying firewood. An old man hobbles across the yard, balancing eggs in a woven basket. You begin to understand that this isn't just work, it's survival. If the food isn't stored properly, people go hungry. If the walls aren't mended, enemies get in. If the fire dies out, the rooms freeze. A castle may be made of stone, but its heart is made of people, and those people are always working. By evening, your legs ache, and your arms are heavy with fatigue. You've barely lifted what the others carry each day, yet your body is sore. As the sun sinks behind the towers, the workers retreat to the barracks, their simple meals and thin blankets waiting. There are no rewards, only the satisfaction of having done enough for today. Tomorrow, it begins again.
As dusk falls on the castle, a horn sounds from the guard post above the gatehouse, not in alarm, but as part of the nightly watch rotation. Still, it makes your heart race. The truth is, medieval castles weren't just homes, they were defensive strongholds. Every archway, tower, and portcullis exists for one purpose: to keep enemies out. And when enemies arrive, everything changes. You climb the winding stone steps of the gatehouse tower to join the night guard. The view from the top is breathtaking. Endless hills, forests, and winding rivers bathed in the orange of the setting sun. But your guide points to the distant road and explains that this peaceful landscape could, at any moment, become a battlefield. You peer down into the castle courtyard. If there were a siege tomorrow, all activity would shift. The gates would close, supplies would be rationed, walls would be manned, civilians would be sent into the inner bailey or crammed into underground cellars. A castle under siege is not just dangerous, it is terrifying. Food runs out, wells are poisoned, diseases spread faster, morale cracks. And yet the castle was designed to hold firm, at least in theory. You explore the battlements. Narrow walkways overlook steep drops where boiling oil or stones might be poured on attackers. Archers practice at targets shaped like advancing men. The garrison commander explains how each part of the castle serves a purpose: the murder holes, the curtain walls, the angled gates. You descend to the armory, where weapons are stacked in rows: spears, swords, crossbows and heavy longbows, with draw weights that would cripple an untrained arm. Armor hangs on hooks like sleeping soldiers. In war, the peaceful routines you've grown used to would vanish. Feasts would be replaced by rationed grain. Songs would give way to shouted orders. Rooms would be darkened, windows sealed. Everyone would be on edge. You meet a retired knight, Sir Elric, who once defended the castle in his youth. His eyes are weary as he recounts a winter siege. 3 months long, he says, with dwindling supplies, and the constant fear that the enemy would find a weakness. We heard them digging one night, he whispers, trying to tunnel under the wall. We flooded the tunnel, but not before it collapsed and took 2 of ours with it. You look around and realize how vulnerable even these massive stone walls could become. Yet most sieges never ended in battle. They ended in surrender, slow, humiliating, inevitable. Castles were deterrents as much as fortresses. But when push came to shove, they were tested harshly. You descend into the dungeon, where prisoners of war, or traitors, might be kept. The air is damp and smells of rust and mildew. These aren't just holding cells, they're warnings. These aren't just holding cells, they're warnings. Life in a castle meant being constantly aware of threats: raiders, rival lords, uprisings, or even betrayal from within. It was a world built on the edge of a knife. As night falls completely, the castle goes quiet, but your thoughts are louder than ever. Every brick of this place was placed with defense in mind. Every hallway curves to confuse. Every gate can be barred in a heartbeat. And if war comes, really comes, these walls won't make it easier. They just make it possible. You rise again to the creak of the wooden shutters being opened. But something feels different today. The light is warmer, the air somehow stiller. The footsteps outside your chamber slower, more deliberate. You dress quietly, stepping into the corridor with a mind not on labor or threat or feasting, but on the people who have known this place not for days, but for decades, even lifetimes. What was it like to be born in a castle, to live every day within these walls, to die here? You find yourself drawn to the chapel. A christening is taking place, a newborn swaddled tightly in linen, its face red and blinking, cradled in the arms of a woman who might be barely more than a girl herself. The priest speaks low Latin over the child as villagers and castle folk look on in reverence. This small child, born in the shadow of stone, might never see beyond it. For many this was life. You follow the flow of the morning toward the nursery, where a nursemaid oversees a group of children of varying ages. Some are the sons and daughters of nobility, educated in the arts of reading and scripture. Others are young pages and squires, already training to become part of the castle's hierarchy. You watch them play with wooden swords, and chase one another through the courtyard, their laughter echoing. But even in play, there's purpose. Boys are learning to hold blades, girls are taught to manage households. By age 7, noble boys would become pages. At 14, squires. At 21, knights if they survived that long. Girls of noble birth were often betrothed by 12 and married soon after. Their lives revolved around duty, learning to manage servants, arrange households, raise children. You think about the difference in childhood here. It is shorter, quieter, more directed. There's little room for dreams unlinked to rank or service. You visit an old woman spinning wool by the fire. Her hands are knotted with age, her back hunched from years of labor. She tells you she was born in the village just outside the gates, brought into the castle to work as a child. She has served 3 generations of lords. I have not left these walls in 26 years, she says softly. I see the seasons change only by the wind in the courtyard, and the taste of the stew. You wonder if she feels trapped or rooted, perhaps both. In a room just above the chapel, you find a scribe copying family records onto parchment, a history of births, deaths and marriages within the castle. Every line is a thread in the castle's tapestry. You trace a finger along one name, a knight who died defending the gate during a siege, another, a maid who succumbed to fever during winter, a cook who lived to 90, a falconer who vanished one autumn day and was never seen again. These people are the real soul of the castle, not just the lords and banners, but those who lived ordinary lives in extraordinary surroundings. You find yourself by the hearth again as the evening falls, and across from you sits a grizzled man with a weathered face and hands like tree bark. He is the castle carpenter, and has been for 50 years. He speaks of wood as though it breathes. Oak, ash, yew, and he's worked on nearly every beam in this place. His pride is evident, but so is his weariness. I've replaced the same stair railings 3 times, he says. They'll still be here when I'm gone. There's a humility in that, in knowing the castle will outlive you. He nods toward the chapel tower, where bells mark time. My father rang those bells, his father too. It occurs to you that for many the castle isn't just a fortress or a residence. It is inheritance, not just in title but in identity. You begin to sense what it must feel like to grow old here, where every creak in the wood, every groove in the stone, holds memories you helped create. Even grief here is embedded in place. You pass the graveyard beside the chapel, simple stones marked with names and dates. Some have carvings, a rose, a cross, a sword. Others are nearly worn smooth by rain. People are buried close to the walls they lived within. It's fitting. And now you wonder, what happens to dreams in a place like this? You speak to a young squire who says he dreams of becoming a knight, but not to fight. He wants to travel, to see mountains and cities, oceans and deserts. Yet he knows he may never leave the castle. His duty binds him here. You speak to a kitchen girl who dreams of music, who hums melodies as she chops onions. She knows dozens of songs, though she's never seen a musician's sheet. In a castle, dreams are kept quietly, sometimes passed on in lullabies or stories told by firelight. Sometimes they flicker out, but sometimes you realize, they burn long enough to shape the place itself. You walk the halls again, slower now. The stone feels familiar beneath your feet. The torchlight doesn't flicker quite so ominously. You've memorized the sound of the drawbridge chains, the drip of water from the well, the distant clatter of horse hooves in the stable. This place has become, in its own way, a kind of home. You picture a life here. It's hard, yes, but not empty. There are friendships and family, loves and losses. There are festivals and traditions, secrets and stories. There is joy, brief and bright, and sadness, deep and heavy. It is a full life, not glamorous but real. And for the people who are born here, grow here, and pass from here, The castle isn't just where they live, it is who they are. It is their cradle, their crossroads, their coffin. The castle holds them, like a stone memory. And now as night folds over the towers, you prepare to leave, not just the room, but perhaps this place for good. You turn once more, just before the heavy wooden door swings shut behind you. You know now, a castle may be cold and hard, but within its walls life beats, steady, stubborn, and endlessly human. The castle is silent now. Its towers stand in the moonlight like the ribs of some great ancient beast, unmoving, watching. The courtyards are empty. The torches flicker low. Somewhere deep inside, a shutter closes with a soft creak, and the night exhales. You pause at the edge of the gatehouse, your hand resting on the worn stone of the archway. What began as curiosity, a simple question about what it would feel like to survive a single day in a real medieval castle, has become something much deeper. You haven't just survived a day, you've lived one, fully. You've woken to cold rooms and endless chores. You've heard the low murmurs of prayer in the chapel, the clang of hammer on anvil in the forge, the quiet sobs of someone alone in the dark. You've sat at the edge of feasts and famine, safety and fear, life and death. And you felt the heartbeat of a place that endures not because of stone, but because of people. That's the truth of it. A castle was never really just walls, battlements, moats and towers. It was a community, a pressure chamber for life in all its mess and meaning. Every person inside was part of its rhythm, whether born noble or servant, knight or cook, midwife or musician. They all worked, they all hoped, they all endured. Surviving even a single day here wasn't just a physical challenge, it was emotional, mental, spiritual. It asked you to rise early, to sleep little, to follow strict codes, to expect discomfort, and to face danger without fanfare. But it also gave back, in quiet ways, the comfort of shared bread, the joy of stories whispered by the hearth, the strange peace of a routine so deeply woven into the stone that your body begins to understand it even when your mind is weary. It's easy to romanticize castles, the towers, the banners, the knights in shining armor, but the reality is quieter, harder, and in its own way, more beautiful. Because it's real, people lived here, and they lived full lives. They were born, they grew, they suffered, they loved, they aged, and they died. All within these walls, and they left traces in every groove of stone, every worn floorboard, every echo down the long corridor. You feel it now, not just the castle itself, but its memory, its soul. As you walk through the open gate one last time, a breeze catches your cloak, and for a moment, you turn back. You see the light flicker in the watchtower. You hear the faint echo of a child's laughter. You smell the ghost of bread in the kitchens, the smoke from the fire in the hearth. And for just a moment, it feels like the castle is breathing. It lives on. In stone, yes, but also in story. And now part of its story lives in you. So wherever you are, whether it's morning or midnight, whether you're watching from a bright city or a quiet village, you've carried this piece of the past forward, across centuries, across space. That's no small thing. Thank you for walking these halls with me, for listening closely, for imagining deeply. Before we part, I'd love to know, where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are? It's fascinating to see where this journey has reached, how far these old stones have traveled in spirit. Until next time, take care, sleep well, dream deeply, and remember, behind every stone wall, there once beat a human heart.